Well, you know, what's the difference? Him sleeping all the way home or you sleeping through the show?
I don't know that there is a difference. I'm not sure there is one. Our first guest is Ryan Frankenberry. He is the executive director of the state's Democratic Party, a native Berkeley County as well, Musselman graduate. Good morning, Ryan. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Admiral. And, of course, good morning, John Doyle, our great delegate and senator. It's great to be with you.
I was never a senator.
Senate candidate.
Oh, I'm sorry. You did run, but we got hopes for you, brother. Well, anyway, listen, I was just cackling over that conversation about taking kids to school because I still take my kids take your kids to work. My kids go to work with me quite frequently. Today, of course, we had a day off here in Kanawha County. I think most everybody's off today. But for today with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, yeah, I'm on dad duty here at the house. We're also snowed in. We got quite a bit of snow yesterday, but my kids love to come to the office, and I love having them at the office. So I'm fortunate that my kids are only 6 and 10, so I've got a couple years before they get bored of dad.
One day I had to bring my oldest son, Dominic, when he was an infant. I had to bring him into school because the daycare lady was closed one day, and I didn't know she was closed that day. It was for an obscure holiday. She used to take every holiday, like Arbor Day. She took Arbor Day, whatever. So I had to bring him in, and she had all the diapers, right? We had our home supply. She had her supply, and I had like the emergency bag of like 1 or 2. And so I didn't think about it. I took him to work with me, and, I was a DJ at the time, and I look over, and the boy's making a face. And I look in the bag, and there's like 1 diaper. I'm like, oh, this is going to have to last. Because we don't have any options after this one. So that was a little stressful. But otherwise, it's always gone relatively smoothly. Speaking of things going smoothly, Ryan, let's talk about this Joe DeSoto seat, the 91st in the House of Delegates, and the future of it in terms of which party has the actual right to this seat. As the state's executive director of the Democratic Party, can I presume that you believe this should remain a Democratic seat since he switched to the Democratic Party?
I do. And, first and foremost, from the time that I became aware of his party switch, my only response is we have to follow the law. And the state law clearly states, and was changed in 2018, to say that if a vacancy occurs in a legislative seat, that the party at the time of the vacancy shall fill it. And so understanding the law and believing in the law, we started following it. We were disappointed when we saw House Resolution 4 come out minutes before the actual start of session, and reacted very quickly to review it and offer an amendment to try to fix it for the majority party, to have it be a more legitimate, although we still actually disagree with the process of the resolution itself. It is our belief that should the House of Delegates want to expel somebody, they should make a motion to expel and actually expel the individual. And so, I was listening to my chair delegate, Mike Pushkin, last week talk with a few of you all, and noticed that, he had made a comment that there's no precedent, and then noticed in the chat that a member of the House of Delegates staff claimed that there was. And I think it's important that we be clear about everything that's happening, as clear as we can. And the simple fact is that, and John should recall this quite well because he's actually was serving at the time in the House of Delegates, and is mentioned in day 1 of the Journal of 2007 on January 10th of 2007 as starting off that session. There was an issue with a Democratic delegate from back then. It was House District 27 in Raleigh County. It was a multi-member district. An incumbent who had essentially stopped coming to interims during the 2006 post-session cycle, and then yet won his reelection, and then failed to appear on January 10th of 2007 for the first day of session, and subsequently after continued to fail to appear. There were numerous attempts to communicate with with that particular delegate, including having letters hand delivered, things like that of that nature. And finally, there was an attempt to pass a resolution. That resolution was referenced last week, House Resolution 16 of 2007. It looks very similar to the House resolution passed a week or so ago by the majority party, essentially just saying that the seat's vacant, the person didn't come. However, what was left out of that, and what I think is important to at least mention, is 1 week later, House Resolution 22 was passed, and I'm going to read the entire thing because it's real short. The House, that House Resolution 16 declaring vacant the seat heretofore reserved for Mr. Ron Thompson, 27th Delegate District, heretofore adopted on February 8, 2007, be and it is hereby rescinded and nullified. That was 1 week later. So there was no precedent set by the House of Delegates. In fact, the individual in question was sworn in early March, and it was March 5th, I believe. He did not actually attend any meetings, did not serve, did not come to any other days. He subsequently did resign in late July of 2007. So the simple fact is that there was no precedent set. We just want to follow the law. We believe that Governor Morrissey believes in the law based on his statements at his first press conference when he was asked about residing at the mansion. He, for one, he did reside at the mansion and made a comment, I think that was in direct conflict to Jim Justice having perhaps never stayed at the governor's mansion or resided in Charleston despite court orders. Governor Manchin said that he has a view of the law and that he wants to fulfill that view. And so we believe that when Governor Morrissey's himself as a lawyer and his legal staff review the law, review the codes, they will agree with the Democratic Party that regardless of circumstances, the situation is that an elected member of the House of Delegates has changed parties, and if they agree that he was legally, the seat was legally vacated, then it should be the Democratic Party of Berkeley County that fills that vacancy. And to that point, the Berkeley County Democrats moved swiftly and fairly and transparently and put out public notice to receive applicants for those who may be interested in the House District 91 seat, which, you all are all familiar. That's my home turf. South Berkeley County is where I grew up. So I've run that border from from Morgan to Jefferson quite a bit. And it's a difficult district. There's no question. But they were able to identify several individuals and have put forth 3 names to the governor's office. And we await to see what happens.
John?
Thanks, Ryan. And I agree with you that of the 3 possibilities here, I think you are on the side that is closest to being right. It's a muddled situation. I do think that the state Supreme Court could, whatever it wants to decide, can come up with a logical reason why they decided it. I believe, however, that the right is on the side of seating a Democrat. Now, I also think that if let me backtrack. An irony is that last year, the Democrats in the House offered a resolution, and it was an amendment to a bill, which would have clearly said that any time a member leaves the legislature, the seat would be filled by someone from the party from which the person was elected. And I think it is really important that the Senate chose not to take it up, thereby stating on behalf of the legislature, we don't want to change this. I believe that if the state Supreme Court would come down and say you got to fill this with a Democrat, that immediately the legislature, it wouldn't take 10 minutes for the legislature to pass a statute saying, really, it should be filled by the person, by someone from the party from which the person was elected.
Bill, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, two thoughts. Let me go back to the Ryan's discussion first. Before we do that, Ryan, how's your mom doing?
She's doing well. She's doing well. Of course, with Dad's passing last fall, that was hard. And just as a personal privilege, I was actually in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention when he passed. So made it difficult, but she's doing well. She's got, an incredible support group around her. My Uncle Barry McDonald, shout out to Uncle Barry for continuing to keep her driveway cleared of snow, and our neighbors, the Stillwells and all of the McDonald family in the neighborhood and our United Methodist Church. So doing well, and we're looking forward to finally getting her back to Charleston for some of the kids' activities. My daughter is incredibly talented and artistic, and my son is just getting into church basketball. So we're excited to have the opportunity to bring her to some of the kids' events.
Very good, thank you. I have an observation and a question. The observation is Mike Pushkin was on last week, and he left the impression, admittedly a muddled impression, that he had been talking to DeSoto shortly after the primary election. I've subsequently heard that was not right. That first time Pushkin and DeSoto were contact was after the caucus meeting, or just prior to the caucus meeting, where he was going to be deciding not to be seated. So I guess John Doyle has a little bit of clarification on that. So.
Yeah, I talked with Mike Pushkin yesterday, and he said clearly, no, that after that caucus meeting is when Joe DeSoto contacted him and said, I want to become a Democrat. And how shall I go about doing it? And Mike explained to him how to go about doing it. And that there has been no communication between the two since these allegations came out. Okay. Mike was very clear with me about that.
Okay. Thanks, John. That was muddled. I'm sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
Oh, no, actually, I agree with what both of you say. And actually, I was listening to the intro, and you played that conversation with Chair Pushkin. And what Chair Pushkin said there is also accurate. It's my understanding. I've actually never had any contact with DeSoto. I've never met the individual, and certainly never spoken with him or communicated with him. But my understanding is like the intro from last week's clip. That did happen. People contact Chair Pushkin, and the delegates talk all the time. I don't know if you all would be, especially John, you understand this, but folks call each other all the time. And so I think that everything that has been said has been accurate as far as Chair Pushkin stating that he did receive a call after the primary. However, that wasn't to talk about any kind of party switch, and that, like John said, that it was following whatever discussion was had in this Republican caucus in December is when he notified Chair Pushkin that he was going to switch parties. But as far as so yes, all of that is actually accurate, the way it was just described.
Ryan, do you have any?
I want to point out. Well, I do think it's interesting. Related to this whole thing, the majority Republican caucus has tried to argue that DeSoto is not a member, and therefore trying to kick it back to former Delegate Forsch, who was, as we all know, defeated in the primary by DeSoto. However, it's curious that we also are aware that the former governor, Jim Justice, was trying to ramrod another handout to some corporation with an emergency special session in December, to which I'm certain that that Governor Morrissey was unhappy about, having heard about the $400 million budget deficit that Justice has left him, and that emergency special session was scrapped quickly. But the biggest basis for scrapping it was the simple fact that the point was made that it was a new legislature as of December 1st. And so that was the reason that it was scrapped. There was a There was a Secretary of State opinion put out stating that, yes, indeed, it is a new legislature. The members are members as of December 1st. And so it's important to understand that, that is in code. And then, back to what John was saying about the Supreme Court and the 10-minute switch of the law. That's absolutely what I thought would happen on the day one, was that they would just come in and try to change the law. The legislature changed the law to the current status, its current standing right now in West Virginia Code 310.5. They did that based on the precedent set by the Supreme Court in 2017 due to Daniel Hall. And so they liked it when the Supreme Court made that decision. Democrats disagreed with it. And so I do think that John is right, that if the Supreme Court were to come out and make a decision that the Republican Party disagreed with, they will simply change the law. Either way, from the Democratic Party's point of view, what we're doing is, we are fighting for the law. We are showing hypocrisy, extreme hypocrisy, in fact, because, of course, things could have been vastly different had the Supreme Court not ruled in favor of the Republican Party when Daniel Hall did his switch. I personally am appalled at any party flipper. Berkeley County's got a notorious one who flipped immediately after getting elected. We've got party flippers all over. I appreciated the comment, the discussion last week with Commissioner Hardy and the Admiral discussing party flipping. I agree with both. I think that, you get elected, you should stay elected as the party that puts you into that position. And if you want to leave, then you should just leave the position. To his credit, that's what Doug Scaff did. And Doug Scaff, had become a somewhat controversial figure, I think, at least within Democratic circles. And it was fairly well known that he was considering a switch. Doug could have switched parties as the minority leader of the House of Delegates, and it would have really been a personal insult to many. It would have been an insult to the party, and it would have given the Republicans one more seat, and it would have, it would have been another footnote in history. However, he did not do that. He did resign as a Democrat, which allowed us to elect or appoint a Democrat to that position. That is now Delegate Hollis Lewis, who was able to run for election and won his election.
Hey, Ryan,
so we were able to retain that.
I want to jump in here just because I don't want to run out of time, but I want to get your comment on this. The law is the law, and that's one thing. The voters, however, that's another thing. And right now, the voters of the 91st are disenfranchised because they do not have a delegate. But they would also be disenfranchised if that delegate was replaced by a Democrat. And hear me out on this one. The Democrats didn't even bother to put up a candidate in that district. It's not like there was a heated primary and then they lost in the general. There wasn't a Democratic candidate in the 91st at all. There were 3 Republicans, and then in the general, there was a Constitution Party candidate. At no point along the way did a Democrat run for that seat. The ultimate disenfranchisement to those voters, to me, besides the DeSoto flip, which disenfranchises those who voted for him and party, is to then replace that person with a Democrat because the delegate who won had a fit that the caucus didn't agree with him on things. And then in a fit, he switched parties to stick it to everybody. How does that best serve the voters?
I won't argue that it best serves anyone, but what I will say is that the law needs changed. If we want it to reflect the will of the voters, then it needs to be changed back to what it was originally interpreted as prior to that 2017 decision.
Rob, I agree with you. That is the way the law should read. Mm-hmm. The problem is
it doesn't.
That is not the way the law reads now.
I agree. But in the end on this, if a Democrat gets the seat, I don't see how that serves the district's interests when there wasn't even a Democrat who ran.
Just like that Senate seat went unserved when Daniel Hall switched after and then left.
But did Daniel Hall run uncontested?
Oh, I don't think that makes any difference.
It does to the voters.
Not when you have a situation where anybody can run for a seat, and if no one chooses to run, no one chooses to run. That's my point. Yeah, the seat should be filled by a Republican, but the law doesn't say that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the law. I'm talking about what serves
I think
the
we
voters'
need to
interest
follow
on
the
the
law.
91st.
What is the law? Ron mentioned earlier a couple of caveats: expel, vacated, but he was never he never was seated. I don't even know if we have a law that applies to this just now.
I think that was my point when I said the Supreme Court, whatever they decide to do, can come up with some constitutional justification.
It's a different animal entirely, which is the reason why I cite the fact that there wasn't even a Democrat who bothered to run in that district. And I don't know if that will factor into their decision-making on this or not. Ryan, we're out of time. I thank you so much for yours, sir.
Yeah, absolutely, Robin. And I just wanted to send a shout-out to the Admiral Bill Stubblefield, who was my introduction to electoral politics. And
Way to go, Bill.
Hey, I gotta go. I'm out of time. I appreciate it, though, man. I'm
Thanks,
sorry.
Ron. We had fun.
We got to get to the break. We're back after these.